Well, it was a rare person who didn't accept the underlying assumptions of the Russia story at face value here in the Washington press corps. Internet founder Glenn Greenwald was one of those who did not. From the very beginning, he questioned the theory. He ultimately concluded it was a sham investigation with no evidence to support it. For that, he was roundly attacked. By the way, we should say that Glenn Greenwald was, when last we checked, a liberal, probably wouldn't vote for Trump at gunpoint. But he was still attacked roundly by virtually everyone on the left. Howard Dean called him a possible Russian agent, but he did not seem to care and persisted. And, of course, he has just been vindicated. Glenn Greenwald joins us tonight. So I think before it slips from collective memory, we should just restate once again that you, a liberal, were denounced as a Russian agent by other liberals. What was that like?
It was exactly what you would expect it to be. And I mean, it wasn't just Howard Dean. It was continuously on MSNBC, which, let me just say, should have their top host on prime time go before the cameras and hang their head in shame and apologize for lying to people for 3 straight years, exploiting their fears to great profit. These are people who were on the verge of losing their jobs. That whole network was about to collapse. This whole scam saved them. And not only did they constantly feed people for 3 straight years total disinformation, they did it on purpose, Tucker. And the proof of that is that, unlike you, who has been criticized in a lot of different ways by the left, some of which I agree with and we've talked about before, the first time I ever watched your show, you had on Adam Schiff, the leading Democrat, to talk about, on your set for 12 straight minutes, collusion so that your audience could hear the other side of the story. MSNBC did the exact opposite. There was a whole slew, not just me, of left-wing journalists with very high journalistic credentials, far more than anyone on that network, like Matt Taibbi and Jeremy Scahill and many others, including myself, who were banned from the network because they wanted their audience not to know that anybody was questioning or expressing skepticism about the lies and the scam they were selling because it was so profitable. They did it on purpose. It was a total fraud that they perpetrated on their audience. And to the extent that they talked about this at all, it was to call us agents of the Russian government, to defame us as traitors, and to lie about us continuously to their audience. And there's still no accountability. They still won't put us on their airwaves. They still won't apologize. And they're still lying to their audience. They don't want their audience to know what they did to them for 3 straight years on purpose.
It's unbelievable when you put it that way. One of the things that you've been, I think, particularly acute on, and virtually nobody else has said this, is that those channels, both MSNBC and CNN, have hired and promoted a series of retired intel officials, Jim Comey, John Brennan, and they come on and they basically parrot a certain set of talking points, but with the imprimatur of the agencies they once ran. What effect does this have, would you say, in American society?
It is completely corrupted journalism. The whole point of what we were supposed to learn from the debacle of WMDs in the Iraq War, which, by the way, this network that we're on was one of the leaders of, was the fact that we were not supposed to trust intelligence agencies when they say things without evidence. And not only did MSNBC and CNN use those people as their sources, they hired them as their news analysts. So if you turned on CNN or MSNBC, it was basically state TV. It was CIA TV. 3 weeks ago, Tucker, 3 weeks ago, John Brennan was on MSNBC, and he said that he strongly believes that Robert Mueller is going to indict members of the Trump family either before or after March 15th because he's too noble to use the Ides of March for having conspired with Russia. They kept all dissent off the air. They turned themselves only into the spokespeople of the people they're supposed to be investigating and scrutinizing, which is the intelligence community and the military officials who now are their colleagues, who now report the news. You have government officials who spent their whole careers in the Pentagon and in the CIA. They're disinformation agents who now work at CNN and MSNBC shaping what their news is. And that's why these channels turned into disinformation campaigns, because those are the people that they hired, the people they're supposed to be serving as watchdogs over, the people who are neocons, the people who lied the country into war through WMDs, not only did they have no accountability, they got rewarded by becoming the stewards of these networks, and they lied to millions of people for 3 straight years, and huge amounts of accountability is needed.
So in the last minute we have, make me feel better. I'm thinking that there will be no repercussions and that this cycle of deceit and disaster will continue. Do you disagree? Do you think anyone will be held accountable for this hoax?
I mean, in one way, they can't have accountability because Rachel Maddow gets $10 million a year. She's a huge corporate brand, and she's a big celebrity among liberals, so they're going to keep her on the air. But I think that they went so far overboard in deceiving and lying to people for so long. I watched Ken Delaney, and the NBC reporter, who's basically the CIA spokesman, on Twitter say, look, this is the end of the game. Trump won. There's no collusion. And huge numbers of people on Twitter that follow NBC were genuinely confused. They were saying, wait a minute, you were telling us for 3 years all of this was a given, that it was a slam dunk, that it was just a matter of time when it would happen. I think they've completely lost credibility and faith, even among their own followers who are now confused and disoriented, and they deserve all the scorn and all the loss of faith and credibility that they're going to get. They're the reason why people don't trust journalism.
Exactly. Glenn Greenwald, you are one of the people who was vindicated by this. So congratulations for doing your job as you're supposed to be doing it. I appreciate it. Good to see you.
Thanks, Tucker.
Democrats demanding the release of the full report as Adam Schiff feels the heat from top Republicans, calling for him to step down as the House Intel Committee chair after he insisted that there is still evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia.
And now some in the GOP are demanding answers on how and why this investigation started in the first place.
Did they exonerate Clinton because they had a political bias? Did they ignore all the facts because if they indict her, they know she can't beat Trump and they wanted Trump to lose? Was the counterintelligence investigation a backdoor way of spying on Trump? There's real no evidence of working with Russia. They just use it as an excuse.
I think it's very important that we go back to how it all started. Let's get the reams of documents. Let's give it to Senator Graham over on the Senate side. Let him do a real investigation. Let's get to the bottom of it and hold people accountable, and the time is now.
What we have found is in the last Congress and in the things that I've released, in fact, the 3 transcripts that I've released, and there will be more, Martha, actually go to point out that there was a problem at DOJ, that there was something. You know, we've got a Mueller report now, that are the headlines of that, and we'll see the report later, that actually showed there was no collusion. The biggest lie that's been told in a long time. We show that there was no obstruction.
Wow. That tees it up for Mike Emanuel live on the Hill now for more from Washington. Hey, Mike.
Bill, Sandra, good morning to you. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell drew this conclusion from the special counsel Robert Mueller probe.
2 years, thousands of subpoenas, hundreds of search warrants, hundreds of witnesses, millions of taxpayer dollars, and these are the findings, Madam President. No collusion, no conspiracy, no obstruction.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi arrived a short time ago on Capitol Hill and reiterated her call for the Mueller report to be released. On impeachment, Pelosi told reporters it's not on the table until it is on the table. And Senate Democratic Leader Chuck Schumer is also pushing for release of the special counsel's work.
It's self-evident, overwhelmingly, in the public interest for the Mueller report to be released to the people. The American people simply want the truth. Each American, if he chooses or she chooses, can read the report for themselves and draw their own conclusions.
There were people like House Intelligence Chairman Adam Schiff who made bold predictions about collusion with Russia that didn't pan out in the Mueller report. A House Intelligence Republican says Schiff should step down as chairman.
I do believe he needs to step aside. I think that his leadership is compromised, and it's compromised, as I was saying, for 3 reasons. One, he has stood in front of the American people and say things that were not true. Two, he's attacked his fellow Republicans on the committee and been divisive and saying things about the Republicans on the committee that aren't true.
So far, Chairman Schiff does not sound fazed by calls for him to step aside or even resign from Congress.
You know, I'm more than used to attacks by my GOP colleagues, and I would expect nothing less.
This is the first full day back for Congress. Expect plenty more special counsel Robert Mueller report fallout today. Bill, Sandra.
Thank you, Mike. Mike Emanuel watching all of it. Busy.
President Trump took another victory lap on the Mueller report today, and now that he's done battling the special counsel, he has retrained his sights on a familiar foe, tweeting, quote, "The mainstream media is under fire, being scorned all over the world as being corrupt and fake. For 2 years, they pushed the Russian collusion delusion when they always knew there was no collusion. They truly are the enemy of the people and the real opposition party. Ba, ba, ba." But while the president won't forgive the media anytime soon, speculation running high that he could pardon several individuals caught up in the Mueller probe. Among them, Paul Manafort, Mike Flynn, and former campaign aide George Papadopoulos. Earlier tonight on Fox News, Martha McCallum asked Papadopoulos about that. Watch.
Do you think you're going to get a pardon from President Trump?
I have no idea. I have no expectation for it. I know my lawyers have formally applied for one, and if I'm granted one, it would be a tremendous honor. And of course,
you already spent 12 days in federal prison, which I'm sure was not a picnic, but you'd like to have that off your record.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I definitely would.
I got 12 days. All right, Democrats continue to push for the release of the Mueller report, and there's still talk of impeaching the president because apparently some people don't know how to quit when they're behind. Are they still in a position to make any more demands? Here with me now, the Strategic Communications Director for the Trump 2020 campaign, Mark Lauder, is back. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
So Louisiana Senator John Kennedy was like, hey, man, just move on. You won. Now, don't be a meathead. I think he used the term meathead, which I really appreciate. How should the president handle this?
I think he's going to call out the media and the Democrats for lying to the American people for 2 years. Let's remember, you had people going on mainstream media actually accusing the president of being an operative of Russia. They were proven dead wrong, and now they don't even have the temerity to reflect on what they have just done to the American people, mislead them. And it's really just a shame. I mean, we should just call these networks what they are. All about collusion, nothing but collusion, the collusion broadcasting system, and the Clinton News Network.
So let's talk about Adam Schiff a little bit because he's still running with that narrative. He did not get the Barr memo, and if he did, he's completely ignoring it, which I think is very interesting. It's like the guy who's been the subject of an intervention and drives straight to the bar. Should Adam Schiff step down as chair of the House Intelligence Committee?
I don't see how you can continue serving on a committee about intelligence when you've shown such lack of intelligence over the last 2 years, using your position and your access to classified information and supposedly misleading people into something that we all know not to be true. Whether the voters in his district will hold him accountable is one thing, but his fellow members should say that he's embarrassed the United States Congress, he's embarrassed that committee, and the 2 years of lies to the American people must be held to account.
He doesn't want to hold anything to account, which is interesting. And my advice for Democrats, especially in the House, is if you think you have the president on something, it is always the responsibility of Congress to investigate such things. Make sure you've got it before you go after it. Because if Democrats go for another round of confirmation bias, they're going to lose. Not only they could lose their majority in the House with some fickle voters, they could also easily erode all of their chances of gaining back the White House in 2020. And I guess that's what Nancy Pelosi is weighing. You know, it's a cost-benefit analysis. It's really easy to raise money from a rabid base on impeachment emails that you send out. But the cost could be that you spend all your political capital and you don't have anyone supporting you in 2020 when the impeachment rally falls apart.
And I think that's one of the reasons why the president was elected in 2016 was because he was cutting through all the political speak of saying one thing and not doing anything when you got to Washington, D.C. The American people are tired of being lied to, not just about collusion, but just about the things that people are going to be doing in Washington, D.C. He promised to take action, and so I would think at some point the Democrats would see that their best chance of being reelected is working with this president. Try to do things on infrastructure. Try to work with him to improve trade deals like the old NAFTA, which Democrats railed against for many, many years. But so far they have shown nothing but resistance. And I think when the president is actually on the ballot in 2020 and you have a lot of vulnerable freshmen who won seats that the president carried, they're going to find themselves in a very difficult position to explain a do-nothing Congress that did nothing but lie to us for 2 years.
And people are absolutely over it. You know, if it's not identity politics, it's resistance, and people want to benefit their own bottom line. Democrats aren't offering that right now, and Nancy Pelosi is coming out pretty forcefully saying we either got to walk or chew gum. Can't do both, and the chewing the gum has got to go. Mark Lauder, thank you so much.
Thanks, Kennedy.